Someone had a question about competing against yourself, healthy competition. The example given was more so about exercise and competing against yourself. And wanted to know, well, where does this fit in? Is there a place for this in now getting a glimpse of our true nature? So let's explore this. Competing against myself. Well, we have to see that if I'm going to compete against myself, in a way, I'm divided. In a way, I've fragmented myself. Now there's two of me, one competing with the other. So I'm going to be experiencing this conflict within myself. This opposition would be a better word. To compete against myself. Another way we can look at this is competition in general. Competition is typically about achieving something, whether it be a trophy, a goal, some sort of prize. In a way, it's a game, and the game has a purpose, an objective, some rules, and some sort of outcome. This outcome is usually desired. So if I'm competing against myself, I'll make it more general instead of just working out or exercising. If I'm competing with myself in terms of business or family life, art, what am I really competing for? Right? Because if it's a competition, I must be competing against someone. And in this example, I'm competing against myself, but okay, I'm competing against myself, but what am I competing for? Now just double check to make sure you're not competing for happiness. Make sure you're not competing for perfection. Make sure you're not competing for success. Because these are sneaky ways that this healthy competition is a very subtle delusion. That healthy competition, competing against myself, is just another way that we call seeking for happiness, or seeking for success, or seeking for perfection. I'll make the example a little bit more clear. But we typically have this imagery of competing against myself, and it's very accurately portrayed with this picture of looking in the mirror. I'm competing with myself. Today, I'm competing with you. The man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror. I'm sure that if you just typed in the word compete against yourself, competing with yourself, you'd find some sort of picture like this. It's me against you, the one in the mirror. And ironically, this is very accurate of competing against yourself, Because you're really competing against your self-image. This one in the mirror is like a self-image. It's an image of yourself, in a way. It's a projection. It's a reflection. So let's say I'm working out. Now I'm competing against myself. Well, what am I competing for? Well, I might be competing for the perfect body. I might be competing to get big and strong so that I will be admired or accepted by others, ultimately loved by others. I might be competing against myself so that when I look good, I will feel happy. So you see what I'm pointing to is sometimes the healthy competition is just a diluted way of saying I'm seeking happiness in the future. I'm seeking happiness in an outcome. I'm seeking happiness, fill in the blank. That we're seeking this perfection that if only I have the perfect body, if only I look a certain way in the mirror, well, then I will achieve perfection. And sometimes when we say I'm competing against myself, and this is healthy competition, it's almost a more acceptable way that we accept that we're seeking happiness later, that the happiness isn't already here now. That something outside of me will make me happy. When I look a certain way, then I'll be happy. I'm going to compete against myself, painting. I'm going to paint every day, paint once a week, whatever the frequency is. I'm just trying to make the perfect painting to then get a certain recognition, approval, acceptance of my peers. I'm building a business and I'm not really competing against anybody else. I'm just competing against myself. This is healthy competition in my business. But what am I really competing for? What is the desired outcome? What's the trophy that's going to be won? Well, is it a certain amount of money in the bank? After gaining $1 million, am I going to feel the success that I'm competing for? So we have to look at this healthy competition with a different perspective. And taking the time to explore it can really illuminate if we're just bullshitting ourselves. A deeper exploration. Am I actually competing because I lack happiness? Am I coming from a place of lack? Is this competition fueled by motivation? And this motivation is coming from a place of emptiness, that I'm empty of happiness. I'm not happy. So then now there's the motivation to compete against myself to then gain happiness. Has happiness become the prize that will then be awarded to the winner of the competition? And who's competing against who here? You're competing against yourself. So it's this game that if we don't see it clearly, it's like I said, it's this delusion that becomes this trap. This constant improvement. Just continuing to compete against myself. Every day I'm just trying to get a little bit better. There's nothing wrong with getting better. But when it's fueled by, I need to get better to become happy, that's where there's a bit of a problem. Because it's implying that the happiness is not already present, and it's implying that you are not already happy. So by just simply looking at this a little deeper, you can come to your own clear seeing that maybe, are you seeking for happiness in the future? Are you seeking for happiness as a desired outcome of a specific activity? Because happiness is not an outcome. Happiness is not a result of a certain activity. Happiness is not an activity. Happiness is not in the future. So in seeing this, why am I competing against myself? You can then question. And you question this whole activity, this whole game. And you might have the experience that everything kind of comes to a halt. You kind of scratch your head and go, what the heck? What's going on here? What am I doing? What's the point of this? And like I said, any competition has a point. But happiness in itself is pointless. Every competition has a purpose, but happiness itself has no purpose. This is where I draw the distinction between practice and play, or a game and play, or in this example, competition and play. If you're already happy, then there's no healthy competition in the way that's being asked about in this video. It's just play. It's just play, and there's no point to it. It's coming from a place of happiness, coming from a place of fullness, that you're, whatever the activity is, it's an expression of that happiness. It's not coming from a place of lacking the happiness. So you run because you run. You're not running with the purpose of becoming fit so that you can then look a certain way and be accepted by your peers and then feel happy. No, you're happy, so you run. You're happy, so you paint. You're happy, so you create a business. You're happy, so you work in the garden. In that way, the play starts with happiness. When we have this idea of competing against ourselves, then there's a belief that it's going to end with happiness. And the two are radically different. So in a way, when the competition ends, well, that's when the play begins. And you experience that everything is play when you're happy, because you're just simply expressing the happiness that you are. And whatever activity you find yourself doing is then an expression of the happiness that you are. That you're undivided. You're not competing against yourself. There's just you expressing yourself. There's no opposition. Because happiness is undivided. Happiness is whole. Happiness is complete. And happiness is total. And ultimately, you are this happiness. And there's no need to compete for it. Hope this helps. See you in the next one.